Here's the truth, and I want you to feel it in your chest like I did. My husband raised a crystal glass to family, smiled for the room, then leaned forward and spat in my face while everyone watched. If it were you, what would you have done? Silence isn't always quiet. Sometimes it roars. That dining room was built for magazine spreads, not reality, and in a single breath, the chandeliers turned into spotlights. Every white smile froze, and my blue dress caught the sting like it had been waiting for it all along. I didn't cry, didn't lunge, didn't throw the glass back because I learned a long time ago that some people only hear you when you stop trying to be heard. I sat still, my fingers around the napkin. A friend pushed into my hand, and I watched a room full of grown adults shrink under the weight of their own cowardice. Do you think that's fair? Richard loved a performance. The Dawson mansion glowed gold on purpose mahogany, polished so smooth you could see your own flinch crystal arranged to make water look expensive. He stood at the head of that table like a king who believed the mirror, not the truth. To family, to success, to honor, he said, and everyone clinked like that would make it true. His mother Margaret tilted her chin and looked at me with that practiced pity that feels like a slap delivered in silk. She came from nothing, she whispered to a cousin loud enough that nothing had ears. His brother Daniel chuckled under his breath, the kind of laugh that asks for trouble to pull up a chair. Pattern interrupt. It wasn't the spit that broke the room. It was what came after. Nothing. No one dared say a word. You know what I mean. That kind of silence where the air gets heavy and your lungs feel like they're paying rent. Claire. My closest friend at the table slipped me a napkin, like she was tucking a secret into my palm. Don't let him get to you, she murmured, and for a second I leaned into the softness of her voice. Then I saw the way her eyes drifted toward Richard just for a heartbeat, like power has a scent, and she caught it. Yeah, that happened. I wiped the dress slow and steady because my hands were mine, even if the room wasn't. Richard laughed louder, as if humiliation were a game scored by volume. Look at her, he said, proud of the pain he made a joke. Margaret made a little show of sadness, the kind you rehearse in mirrors. A fork slipped from someone's fingers and hit porcelain with a sound that felt like truth trying to speak. I breathed, counted to 4, and reminded myself that sometimes endurance is strategy, not surrender. When the last champagne bubble died and the guests scattered like guilt, I walked to my study at the far end of the house. No marble there. No curated light. A wooden desk scarred by years of work, a lamp that drew a small circle of warmth, shelves of books that never asked me to prove I belonged. I closed the door and let the tremor roll through me once, just once, like thunder leaving a field unchanged on the surface, but different forever underneath. People think strength is stone. It isn't. It bends, then it stands again. 2 years earlier, I learned the language of betrayal without anyone needing to translate. The office door was half open, and I heard laughter that didn't belong to business. Young, bright blonde. Vanessa, his secretary. I pushed the door an inch and saw what I already knew. His hands on her waist, her mouth on his, their future being written in a room where my name was still on the wall. I closed it quietly, because pleading isn't love, and I won't audition for a role I already hold. That night, he said it plain. Don't start, Emma. You're boring. She's exciting. The word boring lands like a brick to the ribs. I stood there bare feet on cold wood and asked what a wife asks when she doesn't know what else to do. You're my husband. He shrugged like marriage was a coat that didn't fit him anymore. And you, he said, are my burden. If it were you, tell me the truth would you have left right then? I tried one more door before I gave up on the house. Margaret sat in the good room teacup, balanced perfectly, pearls declaring their own story. He's unfaithful, I said softly, and the word felt like stepping on glass you knew was there but hoped wouldn't cut. She stirred sugar into her tea like sweetness could cover cruelty. Vanessa has qualities you lack, she said, charm, presence. Then she set the spoon down and gave me a gift that wasn't a gift. If Richard finds joy elsewhere, why should I stop him? In that moment, I learned the difference between a family and a family name. Back in the present, in my quiet circle of lamplight, I reached for the small key I'd kept on a chain under my dress since the day my father told me, "Protect your future with something other than hope." The bottom drawer slid open. Contracts, share certificates, stamped signatures. Not romantic, not viral, but real. Years ago, when Dawson Enterprises teetered on the edge of a cliff, when debt howled, and investors ran fast, and the empire he boasted about was 30 days from collapse, I invested my inheritance through a channel he didn't know I had. The money saved the company. The terms gave me the company. 90% tucked in a drawer, while he kissed mirrors, and the world clapped for the man who thanked himself for being a genius. Could I have told him that night after the spit? Of course. Would it have felt good for 5 minutes? Maybe. But I didn't pour a life into this to set it on fire because I wanted a good line. So I locked the drawer again, tucked the key back against my skin, and told myself the kind of truth you can only say in empty rooms. Loud power needs applause. Real power stays quiet until it's time to speak. Claire knocked and brought tea, the kind act that feels like a blanket when the air won't warm. She hugged me and I let my weight rest for a second. "You don't deserve this," she said. "He's cruel." I nodded because some nights explanations are heavier than silence. "You're the only one who stands beside me," I whispered, and she squeezed my hands. "Always." I wanted to believe her. For a while I did. She walked past my study later when I stepped out to answer a call. The drawer didn't close all the way. She glanced in because curiosity teaches itself manners and breaks them at the same time. She saw enough to know and not enough to believe. "No, this can't be real," she breathed and slid the papers back like truth would stop existing if she shut it in the dark. Small hinges swing heavy doors. We had a gala the next night, a hotel ballroom that smelled like money and old decisions. Richard arrived with Vanessa on his arm, red dress, bright laugh the whole performance. Margaret floated behind him, blessing strangers like a queen in a parade. Daniel stuck to his side, whispering strategies that sounded a lot like gambling with someone else's house. I stayed near the back, waited, watched. Some nights visibility is a choice. Some nights it's armor. Upstairs afterward, the boardroom hummed with expensive confidence. Richard pitched his expansion across continents like a man trying to outrun his own shadow. "Europe, Asia, beyond," he said, pacing, selling a dream that turned into a bill the second you looked at the numbers. A director cleared his throat. "The finances don't support this." Richard laughed the way people laugh when they're scared and don't want to show it. "Failure doesn't live under my name." Daniel nodded so hard I thought his neck might give out. Vanessa smiled like profit was a perfume. I sat at the far end, hands folded, face calm. My silence wasn't empty. It was loaded. Later that night in the garden with the fountain that thinks it's a secret, Claire found Richard leaning against stone, a cigar burning like a tiny sun. He told her what men like him tell themselves after midnight. That he's misunderstood, that his wife is dead weight, that someone else sees him better. He said he'd already spoken to lawyers. Divorce. I'd get scraps. Vanessa would stand beside him at last. He touched Claire's chin in that practiced way, and Claire didn't pull back. Lines don't always get crossed loudly. Sometimes they murmur their way over. Pattern interrupt. The next afternoon, I left my study door ajar for 10 minutes. 10 minutes is enough time to change a life if you're looking for a reason. That evening, a smaller dinner, tighter circle, the kind of gathering that pretends to be gentle while sharpening knives. Claire hovered near Richard like a moth learning nothing from the fire. Every laugh, every little betrayal stacked and stacked. People think stones are just for burial. Builders know otherwise. Morning. Boardroom with glass walls and a skyline that likes to be admired. Shareholders, executives, advisors, voices low, suits, crisp chairs, adjusted like confidence can be measured by lumbar support. Richard at the head selling again. Bigger, farther, faster. The clapping was polite and thin like a smile that doesn't reach the eyes. He turned toward me with that smirk that once charmed me and now looked like a costume. Emma, do you approve or will you stay silent as always, pretending you matter? I stood. My heart gave one strong beat and then settled down like it too had been waiting for this. I slid a folder to the center of the table and let the quiet stretch just long enough to teach them respect. You speak of dominance, I said steady, and you forgot something important. I smiled. I own Dawson Enterprises, 90%. Rooms have sounds you can't hear until you live in them long enough. The sound of disbelief. The sound of paper moving faster because hands are shaking. Contracts past seals and signatures catching light directors reading, rereading, eyes widening the way eyes do when they realize they've been watching the wrong main character. One of them looked up pale. It's real, he said. She's the majority shareholder. Margaret's hand hit the glass table like truth would shatter for her. Daniel's smirk evaporated, and arithmetic showed up late to work. Claire went still. Sometimes stillness is confession. Richard did what Richard does. He tried to laugh the facts away. Ridiculous, he barked. Emma, sit down before you embarrass yourself. But the trick didn't work anymore. Receipts don't respond to volume. Effective immediately, I said, and my voice filled the room without getting loud. Richard is removed as CEO. Gasps, then the kind of hush that isn't frightening, the kind that makes space. Daniel. I continued, your whispers end here. He closed his mouth for once. Margaret, I said, and she lifted her chin like it weighed less than her pride. You belittled me for years. Your voice carries no weight in this room. Emma, wait. Richard tried soft for the first time. We can fix this, we can... I looked at him the way I look at a door I've already closed. If you had known from the start, I said you would have spat on me anyway. He reached for me by instinct. I stepped back by choice. Claire found her words last and tripped over them. Emma, you know me. I've always been on your side. I didn't mean... I wanted to forgive the version of her that brought me tea that pressed a napkin into my hand. But truth demands a clean line. You betrayed me in silence, I told her. That's worse than open cruelty. She lowered her eyes, and for a second, I saw the girl she was before rooms like ours taught her to worship the wrong things. I gathered the documents. We will grow, I said to everyone, but not recklessly. We will win, but not at the cost of our soul. Some shifted in their chairs, uncomfortable with that word in a boardroom. Others exhaled like a storm had finally passed. I walked out, not like a conqueror, but like a person stepping into a life she already owned. Mini call to action. Stick around because what happened next will blow your mind. Vanessa vanished from Richard's side like a dress slipping from a hanger. Margaret adjusted history and conversation. and told people she always believed in my potential. Daniel got very busy with lawyers who speak fluent denial. And me, I found a window, stood in a square of sun, and took the first deep breath I'd allowed myself in years. News traveled fast. So did backlash, the messy gossip, the headlines that wanted blood. I didn't answer in public. I answered in policy. Transparent audits, expansion paused until it matched reality. A code of conduct that spelled out respect so nobody had to guess what it looked like. Raises for the workers who kept the floor from collapsing, while the men upstairs pretended ceilings were sky. We started a mentorship program. I sat with women from accounting and operations, and we practiced sentences nobody had taught them. With respect, the numbers don't support that. Let's table expansion until risk is addressed. I disagree. We said them out loud until our voices knew the shape. We laughed at how hard it is to say something simple when you've been trained to be grateful for silence. You ever notice that? The way your throat tightens when you speak up. Power lives there. I promise. Richard fought, then faltered. Lawsuits that made noise and went nowhere. Calls to reporters who wanted a villain and a victim more than they wanted the truth. Then a letter. Not typed, handwritten. He said he didn't recognize himself anymore. He said he remembered the way my hands didn't shake the night he spit at me and realized silence can be steel, not surrender. He didn't ask for his job back. He asked to apologize to the staff he'd bruised on his way up. He asked to volunteer anonymously in the foundation that funds shelters and scholarships. He said if I ignored the letter, he'd understand. Here's the part some of you will hate. I met him in a small conference room with bad lighting and no stage. He apologized without excuses. I told him what it feels like to be painted with shame in public, and then asked to be gracious about it. He cried. I didn't. We made a plan. He would do the work quietly. No cameras, no redemption tour. Just hours, just service, just the kind of repair that pays rent to the harm it made. Do you think that's fair? Would you have given him that? I still wear the key. Not because I'm afraid someone will take what's mine, but because it reminds me that doors open both ways. You can lock out the wrong people, and you can lock in the right truth until it's ready to step into the light. The contracts live with legal now, not in my drawer, because power hoarded is paranoia and power shared is protection. The dining room where he spat at me hosts working lunches where people interrupt each other respectfully, and we end early when someone needs to pick up a kid. It isn't perfect. It's better. I think about Claire sometimes. The last time I saw her, she stood by the elevator holding a cardboard box, eyes older by 10 years. She texted once. I'm sorry. I got lost. I wrote and deleted 3 answers, then sent the only one that felt true. I hope you find yourself. Some folks will say I should have pulled her back. Some will say I should have pushed harder. Maybe both are true. Maybe that's adulthood. So let's talk about the argument under all this. What do we do with power when we get it? Do we swing it like a weapon, or do we build with it? Is forgiveness strength or naivety? How long should anyone stay in a room that keeps trying to make them small? I stayed longer than I'm proud of because I thought I could protect more people from the inside. I was right in some ways and wrong in others. Tell me where you land. If it were you, what would you have done? Should I have told the truth the night of the spit, or waited like I did? What does justice look like when love and law are both in the room? True power doesn't need to shout. It stands, it waits, it speaks once, and when it speaks, the room changes shape. Mine did. And I'm still standing. If this hits something in you, I want to hear it. Drop your take in the comments, argue with me if you need to tell me where you're watching from, share the moment you decided your silence was strategy, or the moment you finally raised your voice. Like the video, subscribe. If you believe stories like this, help us name what we live and send it to someone who needs to know that dignity can survive the ugliest night and still choose what kind of morning to make. Your turn now. Tell me your story.